and a warm welcome to our keynote panel, AI-powered multilingualism, friend or foe for European universities. I want to thank everyone who has braved the strike and some the rain to join us today, and also to those following us online. Thank you for joining us. My name is Maria-Isabel Soldevila Brea, very long name, and with Marius, who is in the back, and you've seen her name a lot. We are the organizers of a CIVIS staff week on AI for university communicators that we are pleased to formally open today. For the next 2 hours, we will dive into a topic that is very close to both our personal and professional lives, and we will see why in a little bit. Those who are part of the communication units know me and know that I like to interact with our audiences. So please scan the QR code here, and if you are home, you can also follow the URL and use the code, because we'll be talking to you as well, and we want to hear from you, of course. To properly welcome you to Brussels, I invite on stage someone who has a true appreciation for science communication and scientific dissemination. Professor Marius Gilbert is Vice-rector of Research and Valorization and Vice-rector of Culture and Scientific Mediation at Université libre de Bruxelles, and has been the motor of the creation of different university outreach projects. Please join us on stage and welcome our guests.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, on behalf of the Rector Anne Michaud, I'd like to welcome everyone to ULB. I'm very glad you could make your way through the rain and the strikes and everything. And it's also very nice to welcome you in this brand new building, the Learning and Innovation System Center that has been, there's a joint initiative between ULB and VUB, and it's a very, very nice setting. As was just mentioned, in my own role, I've been very actively involved into promoting science communication in general. It started from this assessment I made myself during the pandemic, because I was at the forefront of science communication during the pandemic, because my background is in epidemiology, and this was because I took the role of Vice-rector of Research, because it was really clear at the time how much science communication was really at the heart of important societal challenges. And at the time, it was very concentrated in a very, very short period of time. But of course, if we think of general societal challenges, they always, most of the time, have many scientific facts at the heart of decision-making. And if we want to address them properly, we need to properly align what I call the 3 pillars of change, which are science, governance, and society. And one of the difficulties we've had is that when there is a lack of trust between one of those 3 pillars, you get into problems and into troubles. When there is a lack of trust between science and governance, we're seeing it live at the moment in the US. We have Trumpism. There was Trumpism 1. Now we're discovering Trumpism 2. And it's even more profound, and it's a bit of a shock for many, many people. When there is a lack of trust between society and governance, we have all different populism movements that arise from this common baseline that people feel that they don't trust their government, that the government doesn't represent them anymore in the right way. And when we have a lack of trust between society and science, we have all what we call complotism, all the kind of different narratives to scientific facts. And when we have the 3, Trumpism, complotism, and populism, it becomes absolutely impossible to address any societal challenges that we have ahead of us. So, of course, as universities, we cannot address all problems, but at least we can try to improve our relationships to governance and to policy making, and we're trying to do that as much as we can. We can also try to improve our relationships with society at large. And when I'm saying society, we've been involved in knowledge transfer for years with the professional sector. This is something that universities have been doing for a while, but there's also all the relationships with civil society, NGOs and so forth, but also with citizenship. And that's really where science communication and science mediation is absolutely important. We need to engage into that much more actively because, well, if people don't feel that we are like researchers in our ivory tower things that are very remote from them, why would they care when universities becomes under attack, which is something that may come in Europe in some near future. So this is really something we have to get engaged actively. So from that, I took the role of, in addition to my of being Vice-rector of research, in the second mandate of the rector, I took the role of Vice-rector of culture and scientific mediation, which was precisely to give more of a political role to that dimension. And we are just about to start the activities of a new deliberation council in our university, which is going to be the Council of Culture and Scientific Mediation. It's going to be the place where this gets discussed within the university in parallel to the Council of Research, in parallel to the Council of Teaching, in parallel to the Council of International Affairs. So this is really a mission in which we are trying to engage more actively, and we have supported a number of projects and initiatives, including in AI. We have what is called our FARI, which is an Artificial Intelligence for the Common Good Institute, which aim to be an interface between the university and society in the specific field of AI. So this is the general context in which I'm welcoming you. And of course, when we want to communicate, language becomes an issue, especially if we are in Europe, if we want to collaborate on communication projects across different universities, across different languages and culture. And clearly, AI has become one of the paramount topics as a potential helper to facilitate that mission. So I'm really glad that we can have those discussions about how AI can facilitate this communication role of universities in a collaborative way. And CIVIS, there couldn't be a better place to discuss about that than CIVIS. So welcome you all. I wish you a very nice and interesting session. All the best.
Thank you very much, Professor Gilbert. I'm going to share the screen with people following online in case you couldn't get the code to participate, because this next step is going to be about you telling us a little bit more about yourselves and your relationship with multilingualism in one way or the other. Marie, can you confirm that they are seeing it? Yes, perfect. So first, where are you traveling from today, or where are you joining us from today? I know some of the answers, but Great. Okay, I'm going to move on, but we see that we're pretty spread out. How many languages do you speak? 1, 2, 3, 4 or more? I used to feel special when because I spoke 3 languages, but until I entered a European University Alliance, of course, or came to live in Brussels. Okay, great. So multilingualism is really what, as I was saying in the beginning, a core part of our personal and professional lives, and hope you exercise those many languages you speak. And I have last question for you. What is the language that you call your native language? Because we are doing this session in English, and we've grown to more and more work in English. But we will see throughout the session today that there's more to life than just English, of course. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing. That gives an idea to our speakers of who they are talking to in terms of multilingualism and geographical diversity. And it's going to, of course, help us throughout have discussions with you. Please keep your Menti session open because we will, as speakers are here, we'll be collecting questions. We will have time, of course, after they present to give you the floor, and we'll have an open discussion for a while. We're saving a lot of time to exchange. But if you prefer to type your question, we will pick them up. After, the same thing for people following online. Instead of adding your question to the chat in Teams, you can do it through the Mentimeter. It's going to be better for us. So what I will do now is I will introduce our speakers. I'll ask each one of them to come on the stage and give some introductory remarks, 10-15 minutes. And then they will come together on stage and we'll have an open discussion together. So first I'll invite Professor Damien Hansen, who is shareholder in artificial intelligence at the Faculty of Arts, Translation and Communication of the Université libre de Bruxelles, to open the discussion with a brief overview of the ethical considerations and challenges in implementing AI for communication. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'll just maybe complete this introduction with some very brief word about where I actually come from, in the sense that I started working on that thing called neural network when it was at the beginning, let's say, of before, when it became established, let's say, as a in the scientific fields. I've had the incredible chance of working with two separate laboratories, one on the computer science side, one on the humanities side, and had that chance of, on the one hand, delving deep into the mechanics of how those things work, but also on the other hand, on all of those challenges that resulted when those systems actually were used in the real world, and to discuss with people using those tools that use neural networks that now we call AI, with the issues that might arise, with what changed for them, but also into how perhaps we could think other ways of shaping those tools, of using them, of introducing them in our lives. And it was super interesting to have that sort of complete picture, which I think is very important when we talk about AI. So as Maria-Isabel just said, I now mostly work on the translation part of AI, but I just wanted to give maybe a few pointers or just themes that we could maybe pick up on during our discussion. And I didn't have to think that far about what I was going to say to you today, because as we've mentioned, as you've very well noticed, we're in the middle of a 3-day national strike in Belgium. And it's important to put the emphasis on the fact that when we talk about AI, we often talk about how it is framed, how it is suggested that we use AI, and often we realize when we have a broader overview on things, that is often an argument to worsen work conditions. We've seen, for example, all of the reports, for example, about how 80% of project involving AI failed. We've seen numbers about how 95% of AI implementation didn't bring any sort of return on investment because people just didn't know what they wanted to use AI for. They didn't know how AI worked. People weren't trained to use AI, but that's not really the important part, I would argue. What we don't often talk nearly enough about is how those people are laid off and maybe rehired afterwards with lower pay, with worse working conditions, often to produce, to correct AI mistakes and to produce the same work that they did before with slower turnaround and lower quality. So it's always important to keep in mind those use cases where AI has been actually used, ideally used and worked well, but also all of those cases where it didn't work as intended. So that was just a brief remark. Another thing that I could mention is, as today is also the International Awareness Day for Violence Against Women, it's also important to, again, emphasize that AI is actually a pretty violent tool when it comes to reproduce those sort of violence against women, whether they are symbolic or actually physical. I could give you a few examples. We all know that those outputs that, for example, ChatGPT gives you are often prejudiced, biased, sexist towards women. We've all seen plenty of images or texts. We could mention plenty of other things. For example, if you use AI to hire people, which is something that is getting more and more commonplace, it's going to discriminate women. We already know that, we have numbers. But I could also mention the deepfakes that are used to generate childlike images, porn images of women that you can actually freely use on some social media today. Or maybe another example that I discussed with the students, we know more and more people are turning to AI for medical advice, medical diagnosis. You should seek professional advice, but the tool is not going to tell you that. We know that those outputs are also biased. If you're a woman, it's not going to tell you to go to the doctor or that you have a serious medical condition. It's just going to tell you that, oh, it's okay, you just take a pill, you'll feel better, just because you introduce yourself as being a woman. But it's kind of logical in a way, since this is, we know what doctors do. So if you train an AI on medical diagnostics that are prejudiced, of course, AI is going to reproduce those prejudices. AI is just a tool that reproduces the training data that you feed it. We could mention plenty of other forms of bias. Algorithmic bias, the fact that it's only going to give you the most probable, the most likely answer to what you're going to ask it. So you're often going to have very standardized, cliche kind of text when you ask for text generation. You mostly are going to have literal translations because they are the most likely output that it could give you for that translation. If you ask it to create a website, for example, weirdly enough, it's only going to give you some kind of pinkish and violet colored theme website because it's the most common today. We have to remind ourselves that AI is just a tool that is going to emphasize what is already common in what we have around us today, whether it's good or bad. We could also mention racist bias, for example. We know that AI is now used in judicial context, and of course, same as with the sexist bias, we know that it's a context where people are prejudiced, and it's going to reproduce those exact same prejudices against people of color, for example. But those are just bias that are encoded in the systems. We can also talk about how these AI tools may be biased politically, for example, by the people that train them or that put them on the market. The famous example, of course, would be DeepSeek, that would tell you that Taiwan is a historically a complete and integral part of mainland China, for example. We could talk about Grok saying that Elon Musk is the most athletic person on earth, even more than LeBron James, for example, because it's something that has been hard-coded into the system itself. But those are just kind of known/funny example. But we can really never know, as long as those tools aren't transparent, what has been fed into them, what has been, how they may be biased to select specific outputs. I only have a few minutes. I could mention 1,000 of problems that we often talk about when mentioning AI ethics. The hallucinations, the disinformation, the propaganda, the fact that it's reinforcing conspiracy theories, pushing people to suicide, mass surveillance, data privacy. There's just 1,000 things I could talk about that are maybe more on the faux part of that meeting that we have, but that are things that we really have to keep in mind. There are, of course, productive uses of these tools. I wanted to put myself in the shoe of the ethicist that is going to talk more about the faux part, but we have productive, of course, uses of these tools, and this is something that I hope will be encouraged throughout those 3 days, because we have to talk about those interesting use cases for using AI. Of course, it's kind of hard to separate them completely from these larger ethical and societal issues. Another big one of them is also the ecological footprint of the tools that we always have to keep in mind. And which is also increasing as we are getting AIs into our web browsers, into our phones, into our fridges. And one solution to alleviate some of these problems would be the development of sovereign, transparent, and local tools. Tools that would be closely monitored, and that I think my colleague will present some of those use cases where a tool can be proactively used and controlled in a way that maybe will alleviate some of these problems. So if you want to broach one of these subjects, maybe we can do it into the further discussion. But yeah, that's about it, I think. Hopefully I didn't go to...
Perfect 10 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's important for our participants, because we've seen it on your application forms, most of you, that ethical preoccupations are a priority. And most of you here have explained that you want to, you're torn between the ethical use of AI and the practicality of it. So I think we move from the idea of the faux, like you said, to the idea of how it could be an assistant in a way to your daily work. I realize that this screen is very bright, and people who are sitting close are probably going to go blind, but I will open now the presentation, and the questions will remain on the background for you to complete them on your Mentimeter. We will focus now then on case studies of successful implementation of AI-powered multilingual initiatives and other communication tools. For this, I have the pleasure of calling to the podium Agnes Vargas, team leader at the AI Language Services Advisory of the Director General for Translation of the European Commission. The floor is yours, Agnes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Isabel, and very good afternoon to all of you here in the room and also online. Indeed, this presentation is going to be more about the friendly side of AI, at least I hope. But I'm really happy to speak after Damien, because indeed you raised quite a lot of very legitimate concern, and I will try to answer some of those. And I think during the debate we can also develop further. So in this presentation, I will also try to keep the 10 minutes. I'd like to show you a couple of practical examples of how we use AI in the European Commission. But just before going there, just a couple of words about where I come from. I work in DG Translation of the European Commission. I think some of you are familiar with this institution. We are the translation department of the European Commission, where we translate mainly European legislation into all the EU official languages. But besides that, and this is what's important for today, we are also developing AI-based multilingual services. Today, I'm going to talk about 4 of those services, but I invite you already now to test all the services that we offer. On this side, you see all the services that the European Commission developed and also offers to the public administrations. Currently, we have 9. What's really important here is that these services are available to the member states, and within the member states to public administrations, academia, SMEs, NGOs, and also to any projects that are financed by the Digital Europe program. We can do so because we are financed by the Digital Europe program, and some of you might be aware, Digital Europe program's aim is to help member states and mainly public administrations and small and medium-sized enterprises become more digital. The services are free of charge, but you have to register. Registration is quite simple. You see here the registration link. Once you click on that, this is the page where you get. So this is just a technical part of the registration. You will need an EU login, which you can ask for here. And then once you have that EU login, you need to come back to this website and choose from the eligible categories, which in most of your cases, it will be academia. Once that is done, you're free to use the services. Now, before showing a couple of examples, I'd like to talk about a very important aspect that has been raised just before my presentation: security, hallucination, or the ethical questions around using AI. You might ask why the European Commission develops its own services. There are so many tools out there. They work pretty well, of course. We did this because security is super important for us. We are a multilingual institution, and just as you, we have multilingual communication needs, for which AI is very, very useful. But first of all, we have to make sure that these tools are secure. So all the tools that I'm going to show you, they are secure by design, by which we mean that we don't access your data. Whatever you upload into the system, you remain the owner of your data throughout the entire process. We don't store the data, we don't collect it, we don't share it. And more importantly, we don't even use it for training the system. So this is really unique in today's AI landscape. Everything happens exclusively in the EU zone. We also heard Damian talking about sovereignty. You will see later that we still use American models, but we also aim to develop or train our own European model. And just the last word about security, it is secure, but please don't ever upload confidential documents or restricted, very high-level confidential documents into these services. It is as secure as it can get, but of course, there's no way to guarantee 100% security. So after this little introduction, I'd like to talk to you about the 4 tools that together with Isabel we picked for today's presentation. The first is going to be machine translation, which is our oldest tool. We started experimenting with machine learning very early, already in the 70s. The system that we use today is called e-translation. It can mainly do 2 things for you, and so far there's nothing really exceptional compared to third-party tools. On this website, you can translate short text, you choose your source language, you choose your target language, and then you get your translation. Here we used an example from English to Spanish. You can do the same with documents. You can translate documents by uploading quite a few documents at the same time. They have to be in the same language, but they can be in different formats. Again, nothing very exciting so far, but we are getting there. So what is really important here, and also Damian mentioned the usage of training data, that oftentimes with third-party tools, you're not aware of what was used to train the model. So here for e-translation, we have the so-called domains. These domains, for you, those of you who are not familiar with machine learning, just imagine that these are different styles, or as we say, engines behind the system. These engines were trained on separate data sets. I just mentioned the very first one, the EU formal language. This is an engine that was exclusively trained on our own data. So translations that were translated within the European Commission and the other institution, which in itself, it's already a guarantee for the cleanliness of the training data behind the system. Now, this is really unique because this data set is not available to the public. We make it available, but only 10% more or less. And more importantly, it's very high quality and clean data. We have a few more styles. I will just call them styles. We have one for general text. So this is something that you would use for text that are of a more general type. We have one for finance. We call it finance. So this is for financial text. The finance one was trained on the translations of the national banks and the central bank. So again, there's already a control at this stage where we train the machine. I just like to mention two other features here that can be quite interesting. The first one is the glossary. Since a couple of months, you can upload your bilingual glossary to your translation, and this will force the translation. Another criticism that we often get is that, okay, machine translation is good, it's very fluent nowadays, but oftentimes it's problematic with terminology. So we can now help with this by uploading your terminology. You will force the machine to translate those terms as you wish them to be translated. We also added something new. It's grayed out on the screen because currently it's only available for the first time for the EU formal language, the so-called AI enhancement. So e-translation as it stands today, it's not a large language model based machine translation. It's a neuro machine translation system, which is still one of the most modern technology available. But we were also thinking of how to add the benefits of this whole new AI era to this machine translation service. And we added a functionality called AI enhancement, which works with this EU formal language style. And we added a small large language model to e-translation that goes into this database that we created with all the translations that we've ever created, and looks for similarities with the text that you upload. And if there's a high similarity, the translation goes through this small, large language model. And what we see is the result is a lot better than just using the more traditional neuromachine translation system. So these are the main features of the e-translation system. As for the languages, we cover 32 languages. We cover all the languages that I saw at the beginning. So all of your languages are covered. All the EU official languages, the 24 EU languages are covered, and we have another 8, such as Arabic, Japanese, Chinese, or the latest edition, Ukrainian. These languages were added because they are important for the European Commission for multilingual communication, or as in the case of Ukraine, it was a solidarity gesture. So as I said, this is all available to do, but you can also integrate e-translation into your processes. What I'm showing here, a typical example is a website. Again, this is also free. So if you'd like to use it for the university, it's totally possible. The example I'm showing here, it's a translation from English into French. So we wanted to see this website in French. Very easy to use. You choose the desired language. You will always get a notification about the fact that this is machine translation. And again, I would like to refer back to what Damien said about this is just a machine. So indeed, it works with Think brilliantly, but there's no human intervention behind. And for us communicators, it's very important to emphasize that we work here with a machine, which works well. It's there to help us. It's there to help us to become more efficient, but it's a machine. So if you need a perfect translation, very, very high quality, precise translation, please always refer to A, and I will say human translator, a term I don't like, but I will still say human translator. And here we have the French translation. I will just leave it up here for a few seconds so that you can check how good or how bad actually it is, because it's not always perfect. And I have quite a few examples for when things go wrong, but maybe that's for later for the discussion, because I would like to keep my 10 minutes. So the next tool that I would like to show you, still from this like older generation tools, it's a speech-to-text tool. I hope that, yeah, okay. So unfortunately the sound was not shared. What was it? We will see. It's okay, it was just for the example, so I will stop it anyway, because I wanted to show you the use case. So here we have a video from our President von der Leyen talking at the Climate Summit 2025. We have a tool called speech-to-text that you can use to subtitle the videos and also to get transcriptions. Now, this is a typical use case in the Commission. Oftentimes, you know, you have a video registration, you would like to have the transcript, you would like to use it for communication purposes. So let's focus here on things that you would need as communicators. You can get your transcription in a second and you can use it for whatever you need to do with that. And you can also subtitle your videos. Of course, there are more modern forms available now. If you use Teams, you know that you can get your transcription right away, also your AI notes. But coming back to these secure systems, this is also something that we offer. Speech to text currently is available in 29 languages. There are still a few smaller languages such as Irish, Latvian, and what was the third one from? I always forget about, what was the third one? Latvian? Icelandic. Icelandic is the third one that we don't cover yet. But test it, it's also a quite useful tool. And because we don't have time to talk about all the tools, I still wanted to bring an example from the newer generation tools. So web text and accessible text are the latest additions to the this panoply of tools that we offer. All the tools before that were based on, you know, very typical real needs in the European Commission. As a multilingual political institution, obviously we needed machine translation. I talked about speech to text, but we also have other tools such as e-briefing, e-reply. These are really things that are super important for policy officers, but we also wanted to cater for communication needs and for accessible needs. So this is how web text and accessible text were born. And before talking about what's behind, I'd like to show you an example. The example you see here, it's a real example. It's a real press statement by President von der Leyen on the defense package for 2025. Very well written. This is how you write a press statement for the European Commission. But I think we can all agree that it's not that easy to read and it's not that easy to see right away what's the important information here. Our web text tool is designed exactly for this purpose. So to create text that are attractive for online readers, where you can see right away what is the key information. And this is what we get by using web text. So as you see here, it's really just a click away, and then you have a text that's structured, where you see the key information that's really easy to scan, and you can use it for web purposes. Of course, as you can see here as well, we have a disclaimer that explains that this was done by generative AI, and please review the document for accuracy and completeness. Now, accessible text, another tool, this is for people who are reading disabilities. So here we really try to target reading disabilities and make the text more readable. There's this so-called easy to read concept in accessibility. So this is what you will get. So as you can see, it's quite different from web text. This is a very simply put text that's easy to read, even if you have reading disabilities. Now, as I said, these tools are new generation AI tools, meaning that we have a large language model behind, which also means that there's a prompt behind. And just to give you a teaser about how those prompts are created. So for the fact text, our aim is to create clear, engaging text for online readers. So typically in this prompt, we would have instructions such as write short, simple sentences, use one idea at a time, use concrete, everyday words, use active voice rather than passive, and I could go on. So think, when you think of these prompts, think of long pages of instructions, right? So for web text, accessible text, we have for each at least, I don't know, 5 or 10 pages. For the accessible text, on the other hand, where our aim is to help people with learning disabilities, we would have instructions such as avoid abbreviations, don't use jargon or explain it, repeat the key points. Oftentimes you will have the same idea several times, use everyday words. So we really try to transform this text in a way that's easy to read for people with learning disabilities. And I could talk for hours, but I will not, because I see that I'm already at 15 minutes, but I hope it's still okay. If you're interested in these tools, you can go to our website. We have many videos, tutorials, explanations about how the tools are. There are more than these 4 tools. As I said, there's one for drafting briefings, drafting replies. We also have a summarization tool, and we have a tool for anonymizing text. So this is quite interesting if you need to share documents, but you don't want to share names or places. So you can test all these tools here. You have here the QR code, and of course we will share also the slides. And with that, I will stop here, and I would be really happy to continue this conversation in the panel later. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll let you do
Yes. Yes, thank you so much, Agnes. Well, you've already answered to some of the questions that I know our participants have for the rest of this week. We've seen a little bit of the challenges about AI tools, and we've seen now a little bit about how they can be useful. But how do we bring this together when it comes to multilingualism, and what does it mean when we are working in this kind of multilingual environment? For this, I'm going to invite our next speaker, who is joining us online, to finish this first round, and then we'll get to talking. So I'd like to welcome Professor Fanny Meunier, who you are going to be seeing pretty soon online. I will share my screen with you in 1 second. Let me highlight her. Okay. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, so thank you for being here with us. I will introduce you briefly for this task that you have of bringing together the ethical point of view, the practical side, and diving into this aspect of multilingualism and diversity in this triangle that we've built with the three of you. Professor Meunier is a professor of English language, linguistics, and teacher education at UCLouvain. She's active in the Circle EU European University Alliance when she has worked on the language compass that she will present today. So I will give you the floor directly. We'll see if the sound is okay. And you will be sharing some images yourself. I believe that that's the best way. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Can you see my slides and hear me okay?
Yes, we can see them, but if you put them on presentation mode, it will be better.
I will, of course.
See if I can turn on the volume a little bit.
Okay. Can you see the presentation mode now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for inviting me. And I was very happy to hear my two colleagues before. So you've had to talk about ethics, you've had to talk about tools secured by design. And in this talk, I will start with the conclusion. And I will tell you that AI-powered multilingualism is neither a true friend nor a total foe. And the idea is that to use the machine, but to keep a close eye on it and to put your trust in people's strategic choices. So that's the key conclusion, but I'll try to unpack this a little bit further now. So in this talk, I'll take sort of a more meta type of perspective. So to complement the technical tool-focused presentations. And I would like to focus on strategic choices. I would like to step back a little bit to question some of the assumptions we might have in terms of multilingualism. And I will focus on making intentional choices and share some food for thought, all sorts of ideas that you may want to react to later on during the discussion. So what I'd like to share with you is just one example of something we built in Circle U, so the European University Alliance our university is part of. And in the framework of the Circle U Multilingualism, Interculturality and Language Lab that I have the pleasure of heading, we developed a language compass. So you can access the full text if you scan the QR code. And the idea was to work on 4 key areas in European University Alliances: teaching and learning, research, communication, and governance. And today, and probably even if you don't know German, you will understand the title of this slide. So the way it's organized, so you have the 4 directions here, but each time for each of the directions, we have 3 big areas. We have one which is worth knowing and thinking about, in which we share some research insights. We summarize the research insights, we present key concepts, and we provide references. We have a very practical part, which is called Toolkit and Guidance, where we suggest practical tools, strategies, and resources. And we have a third part, which is Act, Reflect, and Share, where every member of the Circle U community can react, ask questions, share good practices, or small steps that, or big steps that they're doing into becoming more multilingual. But today, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, many of you are part of communication teams, and even if you don't know Italian, I think you understand the title of my slide. I'd like to say that communication, you all know that, you're all communicators, is not just the transfer of information. So it's the idea of co-constructing meaning. We have shared codes, we have expectations, we have identities, and this requires more than just, between brackets, translation. So what I would suggest, especially when you look at websites these days in European university alliances, is that not everything should be available in all languages, and not everything should be available in English only. So the idea is not to have maximal translation, but we have to have meaningful access to information. And given that universities, and you particularly in your everyday lives, you communicate at multiple layers, internal, admin, teaching, research, society, other European alliances, each layer may require different languages. So every day you're probably juggling with different languages, and that's part of your job, and not an easy one as communicators. So one thing that I'd like to say is that the idea of maximal translation, like translating everything we do in all the languages, for instance, of a European University Alliance, is another form of what we call a monolingual mindset. So that simply means it assumes that there is one language that has to be translated into all the other language. And even though maximal translation is very easy these days, you saw some secure tool, but I'd like to show you one, and to show you, I'm just changing the slide, sorry. Can you see this website now? Yes, okay. So you also probably know that many tools are embedded in the everyday tools that we use. So this is the webpage of our University Alliance, and I'm using Firefox here. And if I simply change the language, I decide to go to, yes, Danish, for instance, translate, and my webpage is translated into Danish. Okay, so this is part of the tools that we use on an everyday basis, and you can get those tools in most of your applications today. So maximal translation is easy, so to speak, is usually pretty good, never perfect, but pretty good. So you can use that. But if we want to translate everything that we produce, we somehow assume that people only consume information in their language and not in multiple languages. And this is not the case. And you saw at the beginning how many of you speak numerous languages. So you're probably okay with seeing things in different languages. And I think that's the path that European University Alliances should go towards, that is producing information in different languages. So not separated in silo, all the same info in one language, two language, three, but providing access and also displaying information in a multilingual way. Because yes, basically translating everything, it may solve the workload problem if we use technology, but not so much the mindset problem. So we need to try and be more multilingual and plurilingual. So, of course, you can use AI tools, and you know about all the ethics and all the potential problems, but at least they're available. But those tools do not replace plurilingual thinking. So you can get data in many languages, but you need to be transparent. We show examples before of this transparency. This was used translating uses this or that, or this was done by an AI tool. But all this does not replace the awareness about the choices. You heard about the biases, and also you heard about the fact that all those tools are not culturally neutral. So if you ask the same question to ChatGPT, to DeepSeek, or to Gorg, you get different answers. And also something that is important to remember is that multilingualism does not mean multiculturalism. So just having the words doesn't say much about the culture. Also, another thing that I'd like to say is that multilingualism usually goes way beyond the official languages of the Alliance, usually European languages, but we should also try to include somewhere in our everyday lives in our universities, heritage languages, migration-related languages, non-standard varieties, because this is not often the case, community languages, because all that is part of inclusion and belonging. I mean, so we should try to give some visibility to languages that are not the official languages of our alliances. Because if we only consider the official languages of our alliances, we likely miss it's not an exact, no exact percentage, but we likely miss half of the linguistic reality of our universities, where we have people from numerous linguistic backgrounds. Also, some pitfalls to avoid in communication, but I guess you probably know them already, but it's always worth repeating them. So, for instance, avoid using flags and visuals to represent languages, because it reinforces national identity stereotypes, one nation, one language, and it excludes many speakers. It's also not always okay, and so we're not really doing well today, but that's fine. Choosing English for inclusivity, because that's often we say, well, let's use English, it's more inclusive, but for whom is it inclusive? So we really have to think about that. That's true for communication, that's also true for learning and teaching, for research, and for governance. And also, we should not overload the staff with unrealistic translation expectations. So some sort of conclusion, why is AI your phyllis or your friend as a communication? Of course, it can save time. It can make multilingual output possible, so in ways that were not possible in the past, so you can get that rather quickly. So if you have a small communication team, you have more capacity to produce multilingual posts or to subtitle videos, to translate announcements and events, which is, super interesting. It's increasing reach and engagement, because you can, speak to more audiences, and you may need different languages depending on the audience. It gives more visibility, stronger inclusion, and a better sort of brand perception in the term of university alliance. If it's multilingual, if your website is multilingual, it's probably better than just clicking on the translate the website into that language. It also improves accessibility. So we saw examples of simplifying text, of providing summaries. You now have in tools like PowerPoint, you can have instant subtitles, which might be good even if you keep the same language. Just imagine you speak French and you decide to have the subtitles in French. It may be very useful for people from the deaf community. The text-to-speech or speech-to-text, some people have preferences, and you can only have, easy-to-read text for quick skimming readers. But of course, AI can also be your dushman, if my pronunciation is okay, if we're not careful, because if we over-rely on AI, we can not see very embarrassing mistakes sometimes, especially in terms of tone, culture, humor, or context. It still encourages English first communication, because there is a tendency to draft things in English and then to translate, which is
attention,
okay?
please. Yeah. The owner of the dark blue bicycle with a yellow tag labeled as CO2, please come to the info desk. Thank you.
Okay. So, go and check. Go and check your bike. And then also it can flatten the human voice. And I think this is someone we really, really need to keep, is our human voice in terms of warmth, emotion. The first speaker today told you about things being pretty flat, standard. We don't want that. We want nuances, and we also want creativity. So in conclusion, so I think we need to protect what we call linguistic breathing spaces in the literature. So that means we need mixing, but we also need linguistic breathing spaces. That means that each language also need some sort of protection space. So it's not separating the languages, but it's making room for more languages. We also need to alternate. So we don't always need to have everything in parallel. We don't always have to blend. So we need to trust communicators and we need to trust their choices. And we should trust them to decide when those breathing spaces for some languages are needed and when the integration is more helpful. So put people before systems. They're just tools, they're just machines. So we need people. And we need some sort of balance. We don't need rules that say everything should be translated in X many languages, but we need spaces where languages can breathe in isolation and spaces where the languages mix and coexist. And that's the art that communicators are doing every day. So moving between the two, but with their awareness and their intention. So throwing many ideas at you, and thank you for listening to me. And I'm very happy to discuss all this with you if you're interested. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Fanny, well, you're from Circle U, so kind of closing the circle in the first round of the conversation. I call Damian and Agnes to join us on stage. We will open the discussion more informally. Please join us here. What I will do is I will go back. So you will stay on the screen with us, and I will go back on Menti to the questions. So I'll read them on my cell phone. If you have any questions, I see there's already one. I will try to include them in the conversation right away. But if you want to participate, just raise your hand. It will not be me asking questions and then you. Let's have a conversation together. Okay? So I'll bring you some water. I hope I'm not deafening you. These are very strong mics, so if we are killing you, let us know. No, I have it here. So I'll start with the first question and then we'll move to the audience, and please feel free to jump in, any of you. What we can see is a tension between our ethical concerns about the use of AI from environmental to human rights, and kind of an urge to use these tools that are helping us in reality facilitate our work in many ways. How do you negotiate these two areas, wanting to tackle the needs of your everyday job or even your personal life, the idea of bringing inclusion and diversity to the work that you do? And in the case of most people here, we work in international relations or with European University alliances. How do you conciliate the two, the ethical dimension and just the idea that these tools are so useful that we want to make them part of our workflow?
Now better. Okay, good. So thanks a lot for the question. I think it's a very important and super interesting question, actually. I can talk about my experience at the European Commission. For us, clearly, the introduction of these tools were motivated by the need for become more efficient because we are understaffed. We cannot really recruit anymore. So we needed tools that can help us to become more efficient. Having said this, we are aware of the dangers, even if we have our own tools, which are, as I said, as safe as they can be. We also have an internal GPT system, which we call GPT at EC. So it's pretty much the same as ChatGPT, but within a secure environment. So our way to tackle this, let's say, tension, you said, Isabel, I wouldn't really call it tension, but actually what we find super important is to raise awareness about what AI can do for you and what it can't, and what is a safe way of using AI. So in the European Commission, we have an entire system behind, which I didn't have time to show. We have a platform that we call AI at EC. It's full of information. We have systematic trainings for policy officers, also for managers, also for developers. We set up a community that we call AI champions throughout the entire commission, where we have one person per department, and we are also expanding these networks so that we have one person per unit, where you have 20 people, let's say, in a unit, a person that you can go to ask questions about AI. This is a person who receives a lot of trainings so that this person can also train and raise awareness about the use of AI in the commission. So there's it's not just something that we launch like this because then there's an urge for become more efficient, but there's a very thought through and serious way of informing the colleagues and also to teach them how to use AI. So this is how we do this. And then if you think of the more bigger context, there's the AI Act, which is also very important for the Commission. We are also compliant with the AI Act. Of course, we have to check our own tools. But I think I would really put the emphasis on education, on raising awareness and educating our colleagues about the the friendliness, but also the dangers of AI. So this is how we do it at the Commission.
Do you want to jump in? Either of you, Fanny or Damien?
Yes, maybe. So I fully agree with what's been said. And perhaps one other thing that I'd like to say is that not everything should be on the communicator's shoulders, because we know that people today use loads of tools and devices. So we should also put limits to what we can do. And in the past, we talked about bring your own device, but today people use their own device. So we should also give some space to users. But the education and awareness are central to me. So I fully agree there. Yeah.
I would just say that I agree. Those people that are going to use the tool are those that know best. So let them decide actually when or how to use the tool, and this is how you're going to get the most productive use out of it. So the important question is, why are you actually using AI? Is it because someone above you wants you to use AI, or just for the sake of using AI, which is probably not going to be very interesting? Or is it to support your own work because you've actually found useful use cases for it? In which case, then yeah. But then I would say it's important to talk in between ourselves about those, because usually the use cases that we hear about, so for example translation, I would say don't use LLM. We have the traditional machine translation, which works very well. Programming, this is also one of the flagships of AI. It doesn't work that well. But then if you think about those tools in, okay, how can those support me? Maybe debugging instead of producing the whole code, maybe giving you feedback on your translation instead of producing the whole translation, then those are starting to get interesting. But there are uses that we don't talk about, or at least not nearly enough as I would like to see them in the broader discussions that we have about AI. So yeah, those would be the ideal use cases.
I will take one of the questions from the Menti that I think joins something that we strongly feel as well. There is this sense of the inevitability of AI. It's like there's no way around it anymore. So this question is it worth resisting the forced introduction of AI in all of the apps and platforms we're using, or will it just look like resistance to change?
Maybe
Go
just
for it.
yeah. So I'd like to say yes, it's inevitable, but we should also remember that we have the choice. So we don't have to use everything. So we have to use it when it's necessary. And sometimes we can go back to the defaults and decide not to have this or that tool in addition. So it's like having robots in your kitchen. You don't need 25 different robots. Just use a few that are useful for you. But I think thinking that we will live in a society where no AI will be available is, at least here in Europe, not really an option, I think, but we can resist in different ways. So it's not resisting to innovation, but we can use it, not too much. We can decide when it's useful. We can prompt the machines well instead of asking 20 questions and wasting a lot of energy. We can think a little bit more, have one good prompt and then use that prompt. So I think all this is part of a sustainable, if it's ever possible, but sustainable type of use of AI. So decide when to use it, decide when not to use it, don't overuse it.
Like to add something, or should we move on? And if there are any questions here, you can start bringing them. Yes. To you, for people online, they don't hear you. I'm going to need help from Donia. Bring it back.
I was just thinking of sustainability. I feel so guilty when I use AI. I have to use it for my work sometimes, but I really try not to use it. And that's what you just said a moment ago. I mean, how do we deal with it, with the guilt of using it? Because you know that it takes so much energy. I try not to use it personally, but I know that, I mean, every time you do a research on Google or any tool, you have an AI answer, even if you don't want it. So how do you deal with it, with the guilt and the fact that you have to use it, but you don't want to?
This is where I would go back and say, resist it. You have browser extensions that disable AI. You have plenty of stuff that you can do to avoid it, and we should when it's not necessary. There is literally no reason at all to have that first AI suggested response where we know 60% of it is hallucination. It's wrong. There is no reason to have it there. So we should actually resist it. Maybe not all the time, maybe in all circumstances, but we have to actively resist it so that we get those tools that can prevent us from going into those harms or misuses of AI, so that we can have local, transparent, secure tools. We have to resist it so that people that may develop these tools or that will ask you to use these tools will provide us with actually safe tools to use, and we'll be aware of those scenarios where AI will be useful or not.
I want to play devil's advocate a little bit here. How about if it's enforced in the place you work? If it's something that you're encouraged to do? If it's part of the deal to be competitive in the job market today? If it's a skill that is wanted for this group here, how do you react to your ethical concerns? How do you negotiate that on the professional arena? Yes.
I don't have the answer to this, but I still would like to come back to the Commission and maybe just explain a bit how we use the tools. So first of all, we cannot use third-party tools. It's forbidden. We have strict guidelines on what to use. The internal tools, they are also limited. Like, for example, machine translation, you can upload quite a lot of documents, but at one point you will not be able to upload more. Also, the GPT-DC, this internal one, it's based on tokens. So when you use it, it will tell you how much you used already from your daily consumption. So there's already this, like, let's say, built-in limitation. But I again would like to come back to the educational part. I think the more you know about AI tools, just as you mentioned, all these ethical and then actually what it does to nature, because let's face it, it all costs energy. We are also training a European large language model this time with our all data, but we use supercomputers. So, you know, we can't simply just say that it's all new and it uses a lot of energy. So I think education is very important, and we have to raise awareness about all these dark sides of AI. And I think that most of the people, they are simply not aware, because it's so available, as also you said, Damien. You open your website, it's right away there. So for me, it's all about education. Second, I think it's by testing that you will also see what's useful for you and what's not. And myself, this is what I do every day. You know, this is our jobs. But like when I'm home, I just don't want to see any AI anymore. And I want to read a book, for example. So I think it's really about education, knowing what impact it has on environment. And then, you know, we are still at the very beginning of this whole new AI era. I think we are still in this enthusiastic, you know, honeymoon part. But I think more and more people will realize that, you know, it can help you with some tasks, but not with others. Second, it has an impact on the environment and on our lives. So yeah, awareness raising. I think for me, that's the most important.
And maybe to go a little deeper then, one thing we could negotiate is having clear guidelines about that use and discussing those guidelines in the workplace, or trying to establish ourselves when and when not to use AI. These are things that they're becoming more and more frequent today. And of course, well, the educational part, we're kind of tackling it as we speak. I promise our three speakers today that we will be in front of a very active crowd of communicators. So don't disappoint me and don't make me look bad. I'm not going to ask all the questions. I have not been a journalist for a while, so help me. Yes.
Count on me.
Yes.
Changing a little bit the topic, I mean, not the topic, because of course we're talking about AI. I was thinking about the fact that technology is moving fast. I mean, what we say today might be not true next week. It's really changing fast. And if today we say like translation are not 100% accurate, perhaps in a couple of months they will be. Do you have any comments about that? Like, what's the right approach to this or reflection?
I completely agree, but I think it's important to kind of nuance that's a view that is very prevalent, in the sense that it's not that it's not always brand new and like we could never have seen it coming. All of the stuff that I talked about, you find papers dating from the 19th, early 2000s, 2010s, talking about that kind of stuff, well before LLMs or ChatGPT were around. There are repetitive aspects of technology in general. And all of what's happening today with AI was predicted years before ChatGPT came out. And then suddenly, oh, we have all of those problems. Well, we actually knew about them, but then it's the difference between the marketing parts and listening to researchers or users. One of my very first PhD communication was how to productively talk about AI, and the conclusion of it was we should not call it AI, what we called neural nets before. We should just call it text generating machines, because this is what they are. And so I go back to that idea of education. I think it's where everything lies, is once we know how it works, what the numbers are of implementations that failed or were successful, how it was successful. Once we know about those, then we can have much more productive discussions about AI. And I would say that it's always important to kind of counter those broad, most probably marketing ideas about AI, because usually this is where they come from. This is companies selling you a product. Yeah.
If I can add something, I fully agree with the marketing thing, because we tend to be overwhelmed. You know, we see something and we think, oh God, you know, how wonderful, so I'm going to lose my job. But I think we need to try the tools, and then we will quickly see the limits. Second, we should speak about those limits to as many people as possible. And third, we should not forget the pleasure of learning languages, of communicating without a machine. It's just like when you cook, you know, you can buy a lovely cake, perfect cake, but when you do it yourself, you also have that pleasure of doing it, sharing it. So we should not forget about that. So we should use tools when necessary, not always. We shouldn't trust the market, and we should speak about the limitations, because the hype of the technology in all technologies, then you see some sort of plateau level, and I think we're coming to that level. And also have hope in, you know, I think we need to keep hope in the people who employ us. You know, they may also think, oh, it's going to work, it's going to be okay, it's going to be perfect, I'll save a lot of money. But Damien explained that, you know, projects with AI, some of them fail. Then the people, of course, we have problems because people get re-employed, but with lower salaries or worse conditions. But I think around us, people are going to realize that it's just tools, and they're great, and they have limits. So we should speak about those limits among ourselves and to others as well.
Yeah, yes, I just thought it was so interesting to hear you talk about the translations at the European Commission. And before I started working at Stockholm University, I was a translator myself for many years. And this was over 10 years ago, but machine translation was used back then. And I now have colleagues and friends from those days who are still in the translation business, and it has changed so much. And it's amazing what automatic translation can do. But at the same time, being like a former translator and like a language nerd or whatever, it still needs, I think you still need human beings who have very good sort of language knowledge. And but I was just wondering, when you have developed these fantastic like AI translation systems, do you still, because you said something about that you had difficulties recruiting, because I remember back then that it was really like being a translator at the European Commission. That was like the best thing you could be. And I had a colleague, she did all these tests and finally she got this job. It was really, so is it, but have people actually translators lost their jobs, or is it just it has changed the nature of the job? Because I know that the automatic translations can be fantastic, but I think you still really need a very good human touch to get the best quality.
Thanks a lot for the question, and I totally agree. Maybe just to clarify things, so I said that we cannot recruit. It doesn't mean that people are not interested, we don't have posts. So the European Commission, just as any public administrations, we are really hit with reducing the posts. We simply have less budget than we used to have. This means that if someone leaves on retirement, we cannot recruit, or not as many people as we used to have. And this is why, by the way, and I'm using this word urge that Isabel used, we have to think about alternative ways of becoming more effective with, you know, the motto, unfortunately, today is do more with less. And this is where AI comes into the picture in the European Commission. Now, coming back to translation, we only do human translation. Our translators, they can use machine translation, but it's just one tool in their toolbox. But we have, I mean, you know, we work with Brea translators. There's no such thing as a machine translation product in the European Commission. It's just that when you work as a translator, just as you used already 20 years ago or 10 years ago, Translators Workbench, now we also have machine translation. So when we translate, we receive the machine translated memory as well, which we can use or not. And depending on the languages, depending on the translators, it's absolutely up to their own judgment. They can use it or not. But the product itself, it's human translation. I might not even call it augmented human translation because it's not. It's just part of the toolkit. But there's always, you know, it's translated by a human, it's revised by a human. So this is human translation product where machine translation can be used as a, you know, just a part of the toolkit. So, and this is very, very important to be, you know, it has to be emphasized that because the legislation actually, so we 70% of what we translate is legislation, and these are not translations. These are, we call them linguistic versions because they become law. So once it goes through the whole adoption procedure, it's also revised by lawyer linguists. It's actually published as law in Hungarian, for example. Hungarian is my mother tongue. So it's a very like specific way of translating. The institutional translation is very different from what you have in let's say as a freelance translator, for example. So for us, it's very, very important to preserve this you know, the human in the loop process, and especially in translation, which is, let's face it, it's one of the jobs that where AI has been there forever, because we had machine translation already in the 70s. So yeah, very importantly, it's human translation where machine translation is just as a tool that we can use. And coming back to the recruitment, it's unfortunately we have less and less posts, so we have to do what we have, and we try to ways of just becoming more efficient with the resources that we still have available.
I have a Menti question / complaint. Is there any hope we might one day stop calling artificial intelligence the range of applications that have nothing to do with intelligence? It's so misleading. How do you react to that? I think I know who asked.
Just a simple yes, please. I think this is also on us to as we've already said, to educate the people around us and about what those tools can, or in that case cannot do, but also about the complexities of our work as translators, communicators, or whatever. It is very important to for other people as well to realize that translation is not just linguistic equivalence from one language to another. It's an act of communication that is situated, and it's important to teach people about how it's much more than just using a tool or what they perceive our job is. But we definitely have to stop calling those AI. As we have mentioned, like in the 70s, we had a different kind of AI, then we had something else in the 80s, and then it came back. And every time there's a new tool, it's called AI, and we kind of forget about the others. And if you actually listen to scientists in the field of AI, they've themselves stopped calling it that because it's purely marketing terms nowadays.
Sorry.
Oh, so sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Oh, just maybe to say that, I mean, you know, we have to call it artificial intelligence because now it's a brand name. But for us, for example, we always say, you know, just remember these are not, there's no thinking behind. These machines are not intelligent, but yes, we call them artificial intelligence. So if you have a better name, Damien, I would like to hear that. But yeah, unfortunately, it's yes, yeah, LLMs, or we often talk about machine learning, which is also a bit misleading, but maybe it's a bit better than just calling it artificial intelligence because it has nothing to do with human intelligence. So yeah, interesting question, I think.
It's hard.
I usually try to use the word machine, you know, machine or robot, because it's a machine. So it's a tool, it's a machine, but yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, and to be very honest here, I don't know if anyone feels like me, how can we keep up with the machines? Because they can write every type of text that we can write, like press releases, PR, communications, news, and stuff like that. And for example, my difficulty is that I speak English, I can write a text in English, but if I put it in an app, it makes it better, and it's frustrating for me. Or if I cannot find a suitable title and I ask the machine to do it, it comes with so many suggestions that many of them are very good, and it's kind of frustrating. And I'm thinking that maybe not today, tomorrow, but maybe in a couple of years, the machine will be much better than me, and I don't know how to keep up with it. So it won't take my job, you know. So
I'd like to say one thing. I'm sure the machine is not much better than you are. So keep on writing, keep on maintaining this competence. And of course, you can use the machine and you can get, a nice title, but you choose to use it or not. But the machine is not better. It doesn't write text better than you do. It blends. The texts are much blender. So if you prompt it well, if you have key ideas yourself, it's part of you as well, prompting the machine. You can use it as support, but the machine doesn't write better than you do. So go on writing, yeah. And enjoy it, yeah.
Maybe one thing I can add is, from what I hear, you're already in some sort of a co-creation process. It's not just the machine creating the text. You're asking it for a suggestion, you're making the final choice. So it's your text. So it's a very much a collaborative process, which is actually very interesting. You're not at all in a process where the machine is doing, like, you're just pressing one button and it does the whole job. I don't see it coming in quite a long time. It still hasn't access to context, to intention, to target audience. You'll still need a human making the decisions, not behind the scene, like actively making decisions. Maybe one thing that is maybe skews that perception is the fact that we've only been using those tools. They've been widely accessible for just 1 or 2 or 3 years, but they've actually been around for years and years and years, and they've slowly, steadily progressed. They sometimes make it seem like it's a miracle or such a huge leap forward. It took years and years for them to just become average at producing stuff. It's going to take more and more and more years for them to become that good. I don't see it coming straight away, or at least not unless there's some sort of mathematical revolution behind the models. Those models that we have today are the same ones that came around in 2014. We haven't really progressed. We just had bigger systems.
Yeah, I just had a question coming back to raising awareness and educating people. I have the feeling, maybe I'm wrong, but like, we talk a lot about AI in universities, but it's not like we can reach the entire society, and it's evolving so fast. And even when we talk about sustainability, I feel like only some people with some kind of education know that there's sustainable, like, that it costs energy to make researches with AI. So I was just wondering, like, could European universities be a solution, or how could we together as a group make sure that the information reach the public? Because I feel like we always talk about the impacts, but in a small group.
Anyone has a solution?
I don't have,
Yeah.
I never have the solution, but never ever. But I think one thing is science to people. Just try to disseminate knowledge to people. So what Marius Gilbert said at the beginning, this distrust that people have about science and about knowledge, it's not only for AI, it's for all sorts of things. So I think we need to go on and do a lot of science to people with clear explanations, and we need to go on, using fact, and we really need to go on this education with educating people and showing them that it's useful, because you're right. I mean, we're in a European University Alliance, we do things, but I think those discussions are sort of spread everywhere. So let's go on, let's discuss, let's share, and let's do a lot of science to people, and let's listen to people as well, because it's important to listen to the beliefs that people have that, oh, AI will do my text for me. But no, it doesn't. I mean, you're doing things yourself, otherwise you get just a bland text. So science to people is one of the ways. So
and
let's
also
do a lot of
perhaps
that.
try to think of the scope that you can reach, not necessarily change the world from your position of a European University communicator. We are many. So I think just trying to reach a reasonable audience first and have multipliers could also help. And of course, the audience is welcome to share any ideas of what you're putting in place to raise awareness and share. I have a question here.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the current state, like of speech-to-speech translation. Is this already like advanced enough? Like what we, the example what you had with van der Leyen with like language to text. If it's already like good enough for, to have like really that I don't know, a presenter could like give the presentation in his own mother tongue and get instantly translated into like the language you choose, and what will be then the implications for learning languages. Like so many of the courses why we learn languages won't be so interesting as before, like for when you have the ability to directly translate it.
I will take this question and then maybe I will hand it over to you. So in the European Commission, we only have what I showed you, the speech to text. In another Directorate General for Interpretation, they are experimenting with the whole process. So speech to text, text to speech. Right now, we don't use it. It's a more complex process where you have to first transcribe the text from speech to text and then machine translate it and then convert it back to spoken text. Right now, there are a couple of projects, but there's nothing in the making really. So this is what we have so far. We have in some meeting rooms, live captioning is available, but that's it. There might be, although we are very careful with this, because for us in the European Commission, multilingualism and this living human multilingualism is very, very important. So there's no plans to replace the human interpreters or even human translators by the machine. Now, as for the impact on learning languages, I think it's a very good point. I think that we take it for granted nowadays that the machine can do everything. But just referring back to also to the previous question, when you asked about how we can keep up with the machine, I think we just have to keep learning. And also then referring to the other question we've just had, I think this awareness raising has to start a lot earlier, because if you think of your kids, for them, it's already something that's been there forever. So I think the earlier we start this education and raise awareness about, this humanness of our jobs and the difference between what a human can do and machine do, we can, this is how we raise awareness. But as for the technology, just to come back to your question, the technology is there. It's a question now whether we want to use it or not. And in the European institutions, it's a very conscious choice right now not to use it. So we use human interpreters, we use human translators, And yeah, we are not planning at all to replace our humans by these instantaneous translation or interpretation tools. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but this is the state of play right now at the European Commission. And for the educational part, maybe the others have a comment on this. So how we can make sure that people will still learn languages if all these tools are already available. I don't know, Damian, if you're busy with the button now.
You've summarized it pretty well. I don't have that much more to add.
One thing, perhaps, again, it's a question of education, because the technology is there. So if you look at the Apple AirPods, they work pretty well. So you have speech to speech. You just put your glasses or put an earplug in your ear, and you get this speech to speech translation. But one thing is, you need machines. You need Wi-Fi. Sometimes you can do without Wi-Fi. You need to buy the technology. So it's all a question of advertising as well, and of buying and of spending your money. So I think it's people's decision to go on learning languages, because it's good for the brain. It's good for the brain. If you look at language learning, I think it's one of the 8 most useful competence for lifelong learning. It's healthy, it's good for you, it's good for your brain. So we need to go on learning languages. We won't be learning 25 different languages. So again, those tools might be useful in some situations. Just imagine you've lost your suitcase in an airport and you can't speak to the person. You'll be very happy to have the technology. But other than that, human contacts are not something, I guess, humans want to lose. And again, translation is just words. But all the culture behind it is not there if we don't speak to the other person.
I was reflecting about the fact that you say, all of you, about educating people, and which is, I completely agree, of course, is extremely important, but we know that education is hard. And we know that, like, you know, when you have something that gives a simple solution to our problems, we tend to choose the simple solution instead of doing the hard work and put ourselves in and write difficult text or write summaries or whatever. So it's so easy. If you have the answer, it'll be like, you know, a button there. And we've seen this in other fields like climate changes. You know, a lot of people choose to fly. We've been flying here, most of us, instead of taking the train, because it's so much easier and cheaper and everything. But we know it's not good. So how do we go, you know, around this problem? Because education alone, I'm afraid, is not going to win it. So we need to put something else into it. What is it that is going to make it easier?
I propose I take the 2 last questions and we answer all of them together. Okay, perfect. The people online won't hear you. We want to be inclusive.
Thank you. No, it's just a comment. I think we're forgetting a bit the fun of it. Like, I have so much fun learning languages and speaking in another code that I learned, and another cultural code with people of another that speak the other language. And I read books in another language, and I find other connotations. I find other lights. I don't know how to express it. When I read texts in other languages that I don't want the literal translation of a machine. I mean, I have fun doing it, and maybe we can remember that. And also sometimes my mother tongue is German, and I find, wow, I can't find now an expression that is so good as the English one I know that would fit now exactly for what I want to express, or the Spanish one or whatever, and a machine can't do that. Okay, that was just a comment.
And I guess I have a comment and a question. And so starting with what you were saying about just becoming obsolete in a way. And for me, I kind of see AI, so I use several, I dabble in lots of different tools, and I almost see them as paints blue paint, yellow paint, red paint. And for me, it's really a collaborative process where, I may ask a question and then it tells me whatever. And then I also change it and think, okay, that's really good, but actually I don't like this word, and we go back and forth in a bit of a tennis match. So I really feel like in the end, I'm augmenting the AI rather than the other way around. So I don't see it as an authority higher than myself, if that makes sense, for one. So just in terms of the way of seeing it. And my question or comment is, I was just looking at my search engine. I use Ecosia, and every time I search, trees get planted, and I hope they really do get planted. But anyways, that should be the idea. And, and there's the community behind it. And I was thinking, one thing I would love to see is, obviously, I know about the environmental impact and the statistics around, if you ask a question, if you say thank you, this much energy gets used, etc. In terms of what's been disseminated on the news and scientific articles. But as Ecosia tells me, okay, you've planted 1 tree, 2 trees, I would love to actually see that in my AI tools, where somewhere in the bottom left, bottom right, there is this, maybe this day or this question has generated or used X amount of energy, X amount of whatever unit we want to use. Is this something that's even feasible? Is it desirable? Because as a user, if I saw that, if we're talking about education and awareness, that would make me sort of change the way that I would probably use it less if I saw that in true figures. Is that even possible, for one? And could it be done?
I'll just react very quickly.
Go for it.
Just on that very last part so that I can pass the mic around. It is possible for us as scientists, it is mandatory to report those numbers, to publish anything related to AI. So why shouldn't it be mandatory for companies as well?
I'm just collecting ideas here, because indeed it's not something that we do, but maybe we could. So I'll bring back the idea and I'll test if we can do that. So far, we got as far as to say that in one presentation, we said that no fridges were harmed in the making of this tool, because we compared the energy consumption to the energy consumption of a fridge. And I was told that actually that's what we used for the entire year. But I'm really happy to see that these questions are coming back, and we speak more and more about the greening of AI. I think it's kind of over silence, to be honest with you. I don't see this at all in the media, for example. It comes up in conferences like this, where we are with other communicators or experts in AI. But I think it's a very, very important aspect. So definitely something that we will bring back to the European Commission. As for the first question, I don't have an answer to that. I don't know how to make people prefer the harder way. But myself, I do it just for the fun, time to time. And, just to see, because I'm a bit afraid, maybe if I will not be able to all those things that I used to be able to do. So just drafting, or usually we use these tools for drafting, briefings, etc. But that's also a very pertinent question, and I don't have the answer to that. And I also like the comment, by the way, that let's just remind ourselves of the fun of being able to speak another language, and all that brings to us. It's not only to be able to express myself, but the knowledge about the culture, to go to the country and suddenly you just feel yourself, but okay, this is maybe another conversation. But I really like this aspect of reminding us, and also our kids, because again, coming back to this, they were already born with all these technologies, and they might not know what that fun is, and how much it adds to your personality and to your life. So yeah, coming up with these examples and show to the younger generation why we want to learn 6 languages. I saw most of us, we speak many, many languages. So yeah, that was just 2 comments.
Anyone last reaction from your side?
Yes, I think I keep the same reaction, this notion of pleasure, because we tend to be blinded by what AI can do, but we forget what we as humans can enjoy. So let's not forget that. And sometimes I tell my students, AI in language learning is like cars in transportation. I have a car and I use it when I need it, but I still do the walking. because I like walking, I like being in the nature, it's good for me, it's good for my health. So all those things, language learning is the same. I mean, of course you've got AI, but there's something good about, learning languages. So that's the last word of human pleasure is also the last one I want to remember for today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Agnes. Thank you, Damien, Fanny. If we can summarize in a few words what we've learned today, we are afraid, but we have tools to learn to keep on connecting to our human side and the pleasure of communicating, of creating content, and thinking about useful ways and reasonable ways of using these tools. They are part of our ecosystem. We cannot completely ignore them, but we can shape the way in which we use them. And we have more impact probably than we think. We've already introduced a new idea to the European Commission Translation Service today. I don't want to close the session without thanking Marie-Isabel, who has been instrumental in organizing this event and the staff week that some of you will be following. So I just want to thank her publicly for all her work. Donia Martinez, part of the team as well. The CIVIS ULB office and everyone here today and joining us online. It is not over. Some of us are here, so we will continue the conversation with a drink, and that's something that you cannot do with ChatGPT. Thank you all.